Good morning, everybody. We'll just get started in a minute. Okay, good morning, everybody. Just while a few others are joining, thank you for joining us this morning to our session on a guide to partner selection, whose role is it anyway? Just to go through some etiquette for the session for this morning, just to say that this session is being recorded and the recording will be available afterwards as well. Please use the Q&A box for any questions that you have for Catherine or myself. We do really want this to be as interactive as possible, as is in a virtual world. So, please do put in any questions that you have and we will cover off as many of them as we can in time. Also, we have a chat box, so that's for if you have any sort of technical issues or technical support queries, and my colleague Rebecca is in the background and she'll be keeping an eye on that as well. And then just to say to check that your microphone is also on mute. So delighted to say that we have Catherine with us this morning to start things. So I'm Joyce Harman, I'm one of the consultants at Heart Square. And as I said, absolutely delighted that Catherine has agreed to give up her time this morning to join us. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Catherine Wilson. I work at the Home Builders Federation and I'm the IT and digital manager. Basically, I just look after all the IT systems and anything digital related, so marketing and websites, etc. So.
Perfect, thank you, Catherine. And I think when Catherine says, she looks after IT and digital, she does an awful lot, sort of more than that at HBF. She kind of wears many hats, I would say. So yeah, I sort of a very rounded kind of looks after everything there. So this slide I'm not going to go to in great detail. It's just for any of you that are not aware of Heart Square. And it's really just to say that we are a consultancy practice. We work only in the NFP space and that we are independent of any other technology partners or suppliers. So just wanted to run a quick poll first, if you bear with me while I pull this up. And this is really just to kind of look to see who is with us this morning. So looking to see what stage are you at. So, are you very much at that early sort of business case, that, developing your strategy, deciding what it is you need to do, or you're at the requirements gathering phase, or that you're about to go out to market, you're, looking for a partner, you're in the middle of implementing a new system, or that you've actually finished implementing. Also, if none of those are relevant, if there's anything that we've missed, please do put it into the Q&A or the chat, and then we can also look to cover that off as well. So I'll just give that another second or two, and great, and I will end polling and let me share the results. So the main people are at that requirements gathering phase, sort of between requirements gathering and going out to market for new technology, partner or system. Quite a few people already at that strategy piece, and then some people that are that have finished or that are currently implementing. So a good mix, I would say there, but definitely a lot in sort of that early stages of requirements gathering and going out to market, looking at the sort of invitation to tender stage, I would say. So if I just stop sharing that. So what I wanted to cover off is for sort of a lot of the projects that we do, we sort of see that projects are broken down into sort of four main stages, or sort of four areas that you should be considering for successful projects. So the first part is very much agreement on the strategic goals, because very often for projects that sort of lose their way or it's not successful, is that there hasn't been clear agreement on what the goals and the strategy are. Very often people go out to market for, say, a new CRM or a new CMS, a website, because either the system is a legacy system or they're coming to the end of a contract agreement, and actually they're looking to just fix a problem, and it's just about getting the tech in and not thinking about anything else. But any of these projects should be more than just replacing tech. It should be thinking about what are the benefits that we're going to get from doing this piece of work. What, you know, how is this aligned to our strategic goals as an organization? So making sure that you're really clear about that right from the start, and that it's not just simply a technology project. The requirements gathering phase is really, I call this, it's the fundamental, this is sort of success or failure to a project. Very often, and a lot of the projects that we do, or where we see from some of the surveys that we do in the market, is when projects have kind of gone wrong, is when the requirements gathering phase has been done as trying to write a technical specification. The technical specification is something that should be done by the technology partner, and then that's more at the discovery phase. What you need at this stage is to really understand, you know, what is it you do as an organization? How are you using your data? Where does your data lie? You know, what is it you do every day? What are the challenges that you have? If you try to approach it in a line by line technical spec, as in we must have this field, it must, you know, flow in this way, very often what happens is people are thinking about either the technology that they currently have, or maybe some technologies they've used at other organizations, and they're very using that mindset. So really what you're doing there is solutionizing for a technology rather than thinking about actually what your functional requirements are. So requirements gathering is really, really important, but not going down that technical specification side of things. Communications, your needs and expectations to the prospective partners. I suppose one of the points to make here is that the fact that I reference partners and not suppliers or vendors, is that we think it's very important that any people that you're working with, it is a partnership. You're going to be working with them for a very long time. And so to make sure that that fit is right. So that's why we would always say a partner rather than a supplier. But being very clear about what it is that you need, what your expectations are, expectations around timelines, expectations around budget, all of those different things, because the more you communicate, the more open and honest you are through these processes, it will, you know, come to a better outcome, that there's no sort of misunderstandings or disagreements when you get into that contracting stage. And then we recommend, you know, doing a really highly engaged partner selection process. There's lots of different ways of going about this. One of the slides I'll talk about in a minute is sort of the way that we approach it, and sort of the highly engaged model. So looking at sort of the project foundation side of things, you know, expanding a bit more on the requirements gathering. So, you know, people often say, well, you know, where do I start? And it is about reaching out to the whole organization, to understand what their needs are, or if, you know, if it is just for you know, for covering around fundraising, but making sure you've covered everybody in the fundraising teams and all of the different elements around that. Where possible, consider carrying out a business process review. It's a really good baseline on any projects to kind of ensure that what you don't end up bringing bad, inefficient processes into any new system, into any new piece of work that you're doing. So the requirements gathering is very much around uncovering what's working and what's not. Then when you're doing the requirements gathering, you're going to be in lots and lots of information in. So you're going to, you know, with different teams, different departments, there will be themes that come out, a lot of things, you know, the same. You want to deduplicate that so that you're refining down your requirements document as much as possible. It's important to have a collaborative process. It's, you know, it's a collaboration, but as well it's investigative. So it's having lots of conversation, asking lots of questions to the teams. You want to see staff members taking ownership and that they're feeling involved in the process. So when you're doing the requirements document for the various different teams, those teams, the people that were in those sessions are the people that will sign off and review those requirements to say, yes, agreed, for my team, my department, they are what we need. Then when you're getting to, you know, sorting out the priorities, agree what's essential, because you're going to get lots of requirements. Not everybody's necessarily going to agree on them. But also, you know, you're not necessarily going to be able to deliver against all of those requirements. You might need to look to do a phased approach, and that's absolutely fine. But again, communicating to people around, you know, I know you've sat in these sessions, I know you've highlighted these requirements, but they are going to be in phase 2 for, you know, various different reasons, either capacity or budget or things like that. But communicating what are the priorities and why the decisions have been made. Then moving on to the invitation to tender, or the ITT, or RFP, whatever, request for proposal, whatever approach that you're taking. some of the key points to include in this are really around, it might sound very obvious, but some background to the organization. The technology partners, of course, they're going to research you, but giving sort of your version of the background to the organization, what it is you're all about as an organization, what you do. Being very clear on what the strategy and the goals, the expected benefits are from this project. As I say, it's not just a tech project, it's not just about replacing X, Y, Z. It's about, why are we doing this? What are the benefits going to be? Is it better efficiency? Is it trying to increase member numbers? There can be endless different things of what it's around. Clearly defining the requirements, as we said, on the slide before, being very clear about what it is that you need. And also, really importantly, looking at system integrations, because if you're talking about a CRM, you might want it to integrate into the website, the CMS, the finance system, so very much looking at whatever it is, looking at identifying all the different technologies that you have, where does all your data lie, and what would need to integrate. So it's very clear and important that you put in that document what the integrations are, so that the partners can quote for that, because there is a cost associated with integrations and you need to be aware of that. Then making sure that you're clear on the sort of the must-haves or versus the nice-to-haves. And it's very important, because what you want to do is, as much as possible, it's future-proofing. So you don't want to go out to market and then pick a partner to then find out later some of the things with nice-to-haves, and you've said they're going to be in subsequent phases, and then find out they actually can't deliver them, or it's going to be an awful lot of bespoke work for them to deliver them. So being clear about, these are the priorities for now. These are on the roadmap for future. We would want this technology to be able to deliver them, so that you're not going to come unstuck and end up in a situation where you'd have to replace the system and sort of end up doing this work again. So being very, very clear around that. Asking open questions. So it's not just about how the requirements, what the requirements are, but how are the partners going to meet those requirements? Because all of the partners have different approaches, they all have different technologies. How are they going to meet them? But also, have they got recommendations for, you might have said, there's a particular way you want to do something, but actually what they can say is, with our system, there's actually, we think, a much more efficient way of doing this. So being open to those conversations as well. And then having a defined timetable and milestones for the project. So being very clear to anyone that's coming in and being involved in this process, that everybody knows the deadlines that it must be done by, so that the process just doesn't drag on. Then moving on to the partner selection process. This is sort of the approach that we take at Heart Square. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but I suppose the main point here is really to say that it is about high levels of engagement. I'm not going to read all of the sort of 9 steps, but it's really about having, demos with the partners, engagement meetings or chemistry meetings with the partners, doing your governance and your reference checks early on as part of this process, and don't wait until you get to the end when you've picked your preferred partner. Do all of this as part of this, and then coming in towards the end to do a final demo, a final meeting, and use that as an opportunity to really drill down into anything that you feel they either haven't covered in enough detail, or you would like to see a bit more of a sort of a show and tell of how the system can deliver that need for you. So lots of different stages, but really it's all about communication, meetings, asking questions, to make it as engaged as process. It takes quite a bit of time, it's quite involved, but it's involved for a reason, that when you get to the end that you feel this has been a really thorough process, and then we can say we've done our governance and that we're happy with the decision that we've made. Then looking at sort of making sense of any ITT, invitation to tender responses or RFP responses, and just some key points on that really, because the responses they're all going to be very different in how they come in. So they can be varying in length. Some can be 30 pages, some can be a couple of 100 pages. So it's about allowing plenty of time to prepare, to be able to go through those in details. Making sure you've agreed your selection criteria in advance, really, really important, because what you don't want to do is they come in and then everyone starts reading them, and you're not really sure how you're going through and what it is that you're going to review against. So making sure right at the start of the process that you've agreed what your selection criteria is. So it could be, budget obviously is always a relevant one, but how they are matching your requirements, how they are matching your timeline. Is there some considerations around security? Are you holding sensitive data? All of those kind of things, putting together your selection criteria. And then understand how you're going to compare your responses, because I say they're going to be really varied in how they do. So putting together a plan for how you're going to approach that. And not, we would recommend putting together a matrix so that you can, sort of look in something in even just as simple as an Excel table, so that you can actually compare. It makes it a lot easier. In the response as well, read the fine print in great detail, particularly around the costs, and being very clear about what has been, possibly taken out of scope or has been moved, to a future uncosted phase. So again, when you're comparing, you're making sure you're comparing all the responses, because if something's been taken out of scope by one of the partners but is in scope for another partner, you're not comparing like for like. So really drilling down and understanding that. And then, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Ask as many questions as possible. This is your opportunity, take it. The partners expect a lot of questions, so use the opportunity. And then just finally, when it comes to that selecting your partner piece, as we say, culture and fit are really, really important. It is a partnership. Be fair to the partners, make sure that they've been fully briefed, that they have enough time to prepare, that you're realistic on your timelines of when people should respond. Circulate an agenda, to explain what the evaluation focus is going to be, and understand who's going to be in the room. Then also make sure that from the attendees on your side, they're prepared with questions. There's nothing worse than when partners come in and do presentations and then nobody asks any questions and they take it as disinterest. It isn't that it's disinterest, but it's good to make sure that you've prepared some questions and that they're the same questions that you ask all of the partners at the early stage. Allow plenty of time for Q&A, and also, for the partner selection process, it's not about involving everybody. You need to have a selection panel involved in that process. But when you're doing the demos, it's well worth bringing in some senior stakeholders and some team leads and things like that into those demo sessions, so they get to see what the tech looks like. So enough from me. I'm going to bring Catherine in. So Catherine, got my list of questions.
Hello.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about the project that you were doing at HBF? So what was it you were setting out to do, and what were the drivers for change?
Yeah, so our project was we had a CRM system which we needed to basically replace because we're a membership organisation. The reasons were like it was an old system-based, not cloud-based system, and we were just basically finding it hard to integrate with things like on our website. The supplier at the time wasn't really interested in the product. It was like kind of dead, really. They weren't really developing it. It was being maintained rather than developed. And anything we did do on it, we just felt like we were wasting money. So we were just pouring money into a dead system. So, and also the other thing was, it was because we are membership, we wanted to know more about our membership. So we wanted to like make sure we had target driven marketing, and I felt like we were just spamming them all the time with and not really knowing what it is they were interested in. So that was basically the start of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are definitely two really good starting points, aren't they? Sort of, as you say, a system that isn't really doing what you need, and then that member engagement piece. I mean, that's really, really important. So as I was just sort of saying on some of the slides, so requirements gathering, it's a very involved process.
Yeah.
Could you just sort of detail the approach that you took to ensure that there was buy-in across the organisation, and an agreement on the final shortlist and sort of signing off of the scope?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, first off, we got approval from our CEO and board, really. So that helped, because I went with a proposal that we needed to change things, and so it was top down. So they were like, yeah, we need to do this. But it also, like you said, the requirements part is really, really important, and you actually helped us with that. But it's easy to think that you know what everyone wants. You think, oh yeah, I know we do this, we do X, Y, Z. But actually, when you actually sit down and go through it with each individual department, you find out there's like really weird, nuanced things that they do that you just didn't even know existed. And so that is just, it's generally really important, because it's kind of it helps obviously define the ITT document that you do send out to tender, but also it's almost starting up that engagement with everyone in the company, because then they're like, yeah, actually it doesn't do this and it doesn't do X and we want to do that. And so it is really kind of important, because it sort of helps get everybody on board as well with the process. So we set up, with your help, we set up a series of workshops, and basically we also made a CRM project group made from different people of each department, so that we could make sure that once we had the final document, that we weren't missing anything. And so we were like going through, have we got that? Did we get this in? And also talk if you haven't got, we didn't have like every single department, we had like a broad spectrum, and like just talk to them and say, is this right? Is this what you meant? So yeah. You even after all the workshops, you go through and go, but is that actually what you meant? And then just make sure you've got it all written down, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. That clarity piece, yeah, kind of just testing, go back and checking. And I really like your comment as well about the sort of the things you uncover, because it is amazing going through these processes, kind of going, oh, I never knew we did that, or I never knew you were using that other system that you haven't really told anybody about, or things like that, or the secret Excel sheets, which is another favorite.
Yeah, I meant to say, actually, the other part that helped us with realizing that we needed to move on was all to do with was around GDPR as well. And like I was basically leading on the GDPR change and making sure we had everything in place. And that was one of the things that was like, oh, I know. And then that we did uncover that people were just keeping like secret spreadsheets around and stuff. You're like, no.
Yeah, it is that bit about, and I'm sure Catherine and I would have said this to you before, around, I always think it's kind of good to do the spreadsheet amnesty, kind of go, declare what you have. You're not going to get in trouble, declare it now. It's your once in a lifetime opportunity to tell us what you've got, where is it all hidden. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So then sort of an early step in the process is looking for the new technology partners. So can you describe sort of that process? What were you looking for, and how did you decide on sort of the short list of partners that you wanted to consider in more detail to take through that process?
Yeah, so like I said, we had our panel that we created, which but also you also helped us with this. So it was actually quite useful, because you came up with a list of suggested partners for us, and obviously we sent through our IT document. So a lot of the things I was about to say, you've already said on the thing.
Sorry,
but yeah, we sent it through and got about 6 that were shortlisted from that. And then we did the 3 rounds of meetings. So the demos first, and then the engagement meetings. Although I would suggest that you do all this over a series of days, because the first round we did it in like a day or something, and it was just really, really, really intense. So I would suggest that if you did this, you break this up into like a few days here and there, and also be prepared to get like pizza and things like that in. But it was really useful. Like you said, we'd also agreed with each other like what questions we would ask, so that we had the same kind of questions for each supplier. And that could be anything really, because it's just depending on what's important to you as an organization. So it's difficult to know like what to suggest you ask, but you basically you kind of know what you think you want from the product So you kind of go through it that way. And also we would take it in turns to ask different questions. So it wouldn't be like the same person asking the same question, or if X was supposed to ask one and they'd forgotten, you just step in and make sure it was down. And that really helped, because you would just write down your notes, and so you're comparing like for like against the other suppliers as well. And it also sort of makes it a little bit fair for them. Yeah. We also had like a spreadsheet which we kept based on those questions and a few other factors that we were like kind of scoring them on as we were going through it. And it was and also the final round, like you said, was we sort of shortlisted it down to 3. So of the 3 favorites, because we were like, no, that, because by that point you kind of get a feel for the supplier, and you know, like if the product isn't right or isn't going to work. So some of them you're like, no, I don't think that would fit for us as an organization. So you're looking for both, really. You're looking for the product, and the partner, as you say, the supplier, has to be a right fit. So if you think one is right but the other isn't, I think we really liked one of the people who were demoing for us, but the problem is that the product didn't really work. So you had to kind of you had to be kind of like, go, no, that's not going to work. Unfortunately, we really like the person, but it's just not a right fit. And you do kind of get a feel for people. But I have to say, I've never told our current supplier this, but we didn't actually like them the first time. And not like we didn't not like them, but we just didn't get a good vibe from them. But then actually by the end, they were like one of our favorites, obviously, because we did pick them. But it was like, so don't necessarily just brush them off. And that, I think that is why it's really helpful to have those rounds to go through it. Because as you might think, do you really need all this? But actually you do. And it was so helpful, because it's so interesting to not only to see how you fit with each other, but also how they gel together if there's like more than one, demoing and stuff like that. So you kind of really get a feel for how they work as well as an organization. So yeah,
I think that's really interesting. That's, as you said, they weren't your favorite right at the start, but it just shows how much, I think I was just describing to somebody the other day that it's a little bit of a roller coaster process, because, kind of at the start there's some favorites, and then no, they're not, and then they are again, and it does change. It's amazing how initial impressions, very often when you get to the final sort of decision stage, very often it's changed from what the favorites were right at the start.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's really interesting, actually, going through it. And also I didn't tell, and when we first did this, and you said that short list of suppliers to us, some of them I knew of anyway, because I've been looking at CRM stuff for ages, and I'd actually met with one of the guys before, but I was just sort of I didn't tell that to the other people on our panel, because I didn't want to give any kind of my opinion to someone else.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to like hear what other people say, afterwards. Like you have your review thing afterwards, and you're like, oh yeah, I agree with that, or oh, do you think you're being a bit harsh there? And then it's I think having the right people on the panel actually is one of the most important things, because they represent, you might think I know what this is, I know what we need, but actually it's really, really, really helpful to have other people's views on it from different sides, because it makes a massive difference, I think, to how we did our selection process as well. So
yeah, definitely. And actually, just thinking about that, and as you say, you mentioned about not doing too many sessions in one day, because they are pretty exhausting.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's important to do sort of a debrief sort of after each session while things are kind of fresh in your head, or do you think it's sort of better to wait, or what kind of, from having done it, what do you think?
I think that's a good question, actually. I think it's really good. Like how we did it was that, because we did do it quite intensively, is that we did it after the end of all of them. We would go through it and go, oh, I like that one, or I mean, obviously sometimes initially you go, oh, I wasn't quite sure on that XYZ or something. But I think actually it would have been, if we'd had more time, I think we would have done that. I think we would have done it more like, yes, afterwards we would have said, more of a debrief. But we did debrief. It just didn't necessarily happen after each one.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, so you obviously you appointed your chosen partner. What did you find to be important or really crucial to the success of the new building that relationship with them?
Well, I think, like you mentioned it before, but a clear line of communication, like what's expected, what is going to happen with your, like, what's your day job, how's that going to work, all that sort of stuff. A clear project plan, so a timeline of what's going through, and also when we chose our supplier, tell the staff, like, so they know what's happening, so putting a face to a name basically. So when we first got them, we're quite a small company actually, so it worked quite well, but we just had like a big meeting and everyone came in and they met them and we went through exactly, they already knew we were doing something, but it makes them more engaged because they know what's coming, kind of thing. So we're saying, right, you're in, this is the supplier, we're going to have a series of workshops with each of you to go through the actual technical requirements that are happening. So it kind of like really helps. And also we got a really good vibe from them, the way they dealt with things. So they felt very professional, which makes you feel confident, and organized and things like that. So I think we were also quite lucky because they already had quite a good insight into our old system. And so they kind of were like, yeah, we need to do this because we've got like these connectors into your old system to do X, Y, Z. So, and they also highlighted an issue that we didn't even know we had before it became a blocker to the project. So it was, I think we were really fortunate as well in that respect with our clients. So.
Perfect. And I suppose, but you've kind of covered it, but yeah, is there anything else that you think about, managing that relationship, long term? Because obviously you went live a little while ago. Is there any kind of other things that you've kind of learned along the way about managing that relationship? Because obviously immediately post go live is very different from, a couple of months when the implementation is finished.
Yeah, I mean, so I think basically we keep communication really is the key thing. So keep up to date. We've got a nice the way the support is quite good as well. So any kind of issues we have are dealt really quickly. So it's quite nice. And we have like an account manager that we see and touch base with. And I mean, like, once you think you've done the project, you're never done the project. There's always things happening. So you're constantly developing it. So don't just think, oh right, I've done that now and that's it. It's like that's never it. Like there's always things to do.
The project never ends. Yeah, absolutely. And well, I suppose that's the point as well, is it's about the point about getting in technology that can also grow and develop with you over time as well. It's not just fix one problem, it's that longer term view.
Definitely. And that is what your point you made before as well, is about making sure, like, so your project is to get this is what we need to do. We need to do X by X date. But actually, it's really important to think, like, where are we going to be in 5 years, or what do you really want to do? Like, we haven't got the budget to do this then, but can we do that? Or we don't know how to do it. We don't even know where it comes out to do. And also, once you're doing these kind of sessions, it's so useful to see what other suppliers do. So you might think, well, they don't do that, but can we do that in like this new supplier? Can you do this in this way? So feel free to pinch ideas from other people is what I'm saying. So
yeah, I like that. That's it. And then one of the biggest complaints really from the partner is that clients' failure to make decisions in a timely manner. So how did you go about managing the process of any escalations or decision making?
Yeah, so like I said, we already had the panel, the project team in place. But we also had some clear roles. So we had our FD was the project sponsor. And so that anything that was coming, any issues that cropped up, we'd have like weekly, I think it started off like weekly or monthly meetings or something, and then it got started off monthly and then or fortnightly, and then it got quicker as the project was tying in. But we had regular meetings, and we had like a list of issues that might be or could possibly be coming up, and if there was an issue, then we'd just go to, he'd be there and we'd say, this is what we need to do, and then he could just go, if it was about money, get approval from our CEO. Thankfully, nothing ever really went in over massive budget or anything like that, so it wasn't ever really a big issue for us. We were actually very fortunate with our project, I think, in that it went quite smoothly, and we and also because of those weekly meetings and all those regular meetings, we could identify anything that was coming up or any issues that we needed to do, and make a decision on what we had to do to not make it a blocker to the project.
Yeah, perfect. And then I suppose finally, we've had lots of questions coming in, so I shall get to them in a minute. Great. What sort of take-home advice would you give, having now done this and you've gone live a little while ago? What advice would you give to any people that are thinking about embarking on a new project and implementation? What are the sort of the big lessons learned for you?
I would say make sure you regularly update your staff what's happening, so have like clear communications. So we ended up making sure we had monthly, like kind of newsletter type thing, update of what's happening, what to expect, how the project was going, but also make sure you communicate with your members as well, because we're a membership organization, whoever your client is, your end users are, because they were at the heart of our change, so we need to make sure that they understand what we're doing as well and how it would affect their online experiences and stuff like that. And don't expect everyone to just change, like don't to just go, right, that's the new system. You have to sort of invest your time with them and make sure that you sit down with them and train them. And the best way we found was to actually make sure we had kind of like a key person in each department that was like on board, and we could like get them up to speed, and so that they could train other people in their department. They were kind of like, I don't know, the super users for their area. Because, and also like if you think someone's not being proactive or helpful with the system, don't just think they're not being, they're being purposefully annoying or something. There's always a reason, and it's always really good to sit down, talk to them, find out what's happening, and see if you can fix it, really. Because normally it's that, well, I used to do this and take me one click or something, and now I have to do all this, I don't understand. And you kind of like, sometimes you'd be like, oh right, actually, yeah, that is kind of annoying, I can understand why you don't want to do it this way. And then you can try and improve it and make it better. And so we have actually got a CRM group that we do, and we have like catch-ups and say, what's happening, what's wrong, like, can we fix things, what do you want to improve on the system? Because like I say, you think you've done it, but you've never done it. Yeah. It continues, and that's a good thing, because you constantly want to be making everything better. Well, we do anyway, so
yeah, perfect. And I think I completely agree on everything you've said. It's that bedding in process, isn't it? Because there's kind of that big focus on go live, but then it's like, get it up and running, get everybody using it for a while, and then see what kind of comes up from that. I think it's really, really important. So we've got some questions coming, Catherine. So okay, let me look through these ones. So the question was, what are the best mechanisms or way to collect and collate requirements from across the organization? I suppose you sort of touched on it, but I suppose for you, how you approach with workshops, did that work? Is there another way that you think is the best way to do it? So for you, what sort of would be your view on it?
I think it was the most important way we could have done it, by doing the workshops. Like, I had a vision of what I thought we needed, but and most of it was more or less right. But there were some things like that came up that I had literally no idea was happening. Like, and so I think it's best not to presume you know what's happening. And those workshops are really, really important. And well, particularly when it comes to finance stuff, I think one of the key things that we found was that it's really important to get somebody who knows and who is the lead in that finance department, because there's so much stuff that happens in finance that I would never think to understand. I mean, I understand more now about finance systems than I ever did, but I think like it's so important that you get the right people from each department and you get their feedback and you know what they do, and so you can I mean, I'm not saying that but like you get layman's terms of understanding it. Oh, that was another thing I was going to say actually, is that when you're talking to a supplier, don't ever think, oh well, they understand more than I do. Constantly ask a question, because like you might not understand it as a programming language or typing it, but you should understand it in layman's terms to be able to get what's happening. So don't be afraid to ask questions constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the partners, that's what they want. In a sense, they want a grilling, because one, it shows you're invested as well.
Yeah.
And that there's not going to be any misunderstandings later.
Yeah. And I don't be afraid to think, oh, they'll think I'm an idiot or something. It doesn't, no one ever thinks that, I don't think.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got two questions to come in that are quite similar. So I'll read both of them because they're kind of covering the same thing. So the first one was, how did you manage the requirements that were either not identified or communicated, especially without going over budget or risking the relationship with the partner? And then kind of the second question, which is quite similar, is around, did you manage to meet all the requirements from the business? If not, how did you prioritize the requirements and how did you communicate that back to the stakeholders? So I suppose thinking about, was there anything that wasn't identified, and then did that then cause a problem later on?
There were a few things that happened actually. I think I touched on it before, that we didn't even know was an issue, and that was to do with the finance side of stuff, which is why I mentioned about the finance before. So basically we had to pay more money, but it wasn't actually that much more money. We found out a solution to do it on kind of not cheap, but like reasonable. It was like hundreds of pounds, I'm not talking thousands. It was like hundreds of pounds more than we were expecting. But basically, you just, with those sort of issues, you just have to kind of deal with it. You can't, there's no way around, you have to have a finance system that's going to work with it. So there's no way around it. We just kind of sat down, thought, what do we need to do? And thankfully, like I said, we had the buy-in of the CEO and the board. So I don't think I said this before, but we did have regular updates with the board as well. So we'd send them a paper of how the project was going and what we were doing. And we'd already flagged that we thought there might be some issues with the finance system. So we kind of knew that something might come up, if you know what I mean. We just didn't know what it was we didn't know, we weren't expecting this particular issue. So, but actually we managed to save on something else. So we did actually come in on budget. So that kind of helped as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember with the project. Yeah, it was really, absolutely really good in that sense.
Yeah,
absolutely. One of the questions, and you kind of touched on it a bit already, but around sort of the time taken for requirements gathering, and so the question is, how long does it take, and how much time should we allocate on requirements gathering? So I suppose from your point of view, the sessions where they were a couple of hours each, but would you say is that enough? It was, how much time do you think it should be?
I think that was fine. I think sitting down with each, because you don't want to you want to obviously get the accurate information from your departments, but you don't want to also kind of go too much into it, because like you said before, you're not actually trying to get a technical spec or a technical, you're literally just trying to find out what they do and what they do currently with the system, and what works and what doesn't, sort of a minor quick, like what works, what doesn't work, what they have in mind. I think with our teams, it was a bit easier because some of them just never used the CRM systems. They didn't really, all they would do is look up something. And then or the ones that did use it sort of hated it. So it kind of helped with us because it was really a slow old system. And or some of them have like the little ways of working, but you kind of just have to say, is that really the, a post thing, is this really the best way of it working, I guess. So, but I think those they were really invaluable, those workshops, because like you said before about having your must-haves and requirements and what you would like to have, some of the things that did come up were like things that we were like, well, we don't need that now, but we could do that in the future. So which is part of like why we do, like we phased it out a bit. So we did do another phase after the initial go live.
Perfect. And then one of the questions which you've touched on, because they say you did have, the selection panel, but the question was around, how many people should be on the panel, because it's that balance between, isn't it, not having too many people but wanting people involved. So when you were thinking about the panel, is there a sort of a number that you think is a good number, or that it's just having that sort of spread, when you were picking that panel?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that it depends on how big you are, I guess, but I think we had about 4, I think, on ours, but I think that was about right size for us because we're quite small. But yeah, I don't think you want to go too much over, because you don't want to have I mean, you want to have you want to have people from different sides of things, so that you're not just looking at it from one blinkered version. Also you've got to have, they've all got to kind of be on board as well. So I think you've just got to pick the right people. I don't know necessarily there's a particularly right size, but I think that was about right for us, like having that number. I think it really honestly does depend on the organization, so it's quite difficult to answer that question without
that makes sense. Actually, one of the questions that's just come in, sort of a follow-up on that, is did you have members of the panel or areas of the business that just didn't want to engage?
We had yeah, that was not on the panel, but when we did do kind of UAT testing and stuff, we did have people who were difficult, I suppose is the word to describe, but like not so you just had to kind of manage those people and kind of just like sit down, explain and find out what it is that is upsetting or not upsetting them, or just not making it them want to engage in the process. And I think most of the time it's maybe that they are worried about not understanding how things work, or like annoyed by the change of it. And so I think you just have to really keep engaging with those people, and you can't not engage, you can't not communicate. That's the wrong thing to do. You have to keep pushing and being supportive, really, I think is the word for that. So and by the end of it, we did get people to who are fully on board actually, and just get on with it, because eventually they will know that is what's happening, and if there is something wrong with the system, then you can fix it, because that's what you're doing, that's what you're there for, so you can improve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and one of the things that you did really well was around, it's that senior management buy-in is kind of the dictate, what it sounds terrible, but the dictate from above, so that people knew that this project was being done and it was a priority, so that people had to engage with it, even if they did have some challenges and things around it. And absolutely, a completely communication, I mean, it's the key to success on every project, really, isn't it? People need to know why things are happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like if people are like nervous about new technology, or like, well, I know this system and I don't know any other system, or I like having my spreadsheet or whatever it is that they have, why are you doing this sort of thing. I think there were so many reasons why we were doing the things we were doing, that once you've explained it to them, you're like, we can't do it this way because it's like, we can get sued like if something is wrong, that sort of thing. It's like, it's kind of once you really explain what something is, and they say, well, this is really difficult for me now, you can say, all right, well, can we just work with it for now, but we will make a fix for you, we will make this quicker, we can put in a workaround, which is what we have found subsequently, is that we have done things, changed our processes, or to make it faster, or improve the system constantly, actually, to be honest.
Perfect. And then again, you sort of touched on it earlier, so talking about the partners. So how many partners would you recommend to shortlist, or to invite in to present or demonstrate? So having done it now, what would you think is sort of the ideal number?
I think 6 was actually a good number, because I think if you had too many, it would have just been, I don't know, it just would have taken, it just been too many different things. And a lot of the time when you watch some of the systems, you're like, oh, that is kind of like similar to what I've seen before, or I think 6 was quite a nice number. And then when we shortlisted it, we went with 3 as the final, 3 before we went to the final meeting, and I think that was also the right thing to do. So yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, no, definitely, I would agree. I mean, we sort of recommend sort of between that 4 or 5, definitely no more than 6, because
you can cut them out any point in that as well. So after the first meeting, if you think, actually, no, this isn't going to work at all, you don't have to then carry on engaging with them in the next series of ones. Although I'm glad we didn't discount the one we chose.
And I suppose
I will say that.
That's the point, isn't it? I suppose that's why it's the good about having that involved process, so that you don't make a decision and then kind of regret it later, going, oh, actually, maybe, yeah. So it's a balance,
exactly.
isn't it?
Exactly. And so also, I think it's you do kind of, as you go through, because you're having these meetings, you get a feeling for the people as well, and that helps you make a decision on like whether it's a right fit for you, because you're going to be working with them, like you say, it's a partnership, you're going to be working with them for hopefully for years. So yeah.
Perfect. And then one about a project plan. I love a question about a project plan. So were you able to stick to the project plan timelines for each part of the plan? And if not, what happened to kind of cause the changes?
We mainly did, actually. There were a few issues around holidays, and we had to move things around for those reasons. But I think we kind of like, we were out by like 2 weeks or something in the end, but we still stuck to our end of October deadline. So I think from our project, it was a really quick one. We started in March in earnest, and then we ended in the end of October. And we sort of stuck to it. But like I say, you just need to really communicate to everybody all the time about what's happening, and make sure, like at the beginning, that it's really clear what everyone's expectations are, because that is where you would fall down, because it's like, we need you to do this, we need you to do testing, you need, the user acceptance testing. That's one of the things that you really need to think about, and how you do that, and get your user stories ready, because that was one of the things we hadn't really thought about. And when we did do it, like I remember me and Rachel just sitting down writing these like scenarios and stuff, and it was like, it's really important that you get that right, and you get the right people to on board really to do the testing and things like that. So from each department, and make sure it's clear to them, just tell them when you need them and what is actually expected of them. And so even if you're literally just sitting down with them for an hour, just going, do it.
Yeah.
Which we did do with some people, but that's just the way, you know, it helps. And I think the other thing as well is make sure you have adequate training on the system that you're testing beforehand. So make sure training is done as well, because like it's all good saying, can you test this? But if they don't know how to use it in the first place, then there's no good. So to just make sure you get your timelines right and make that communication right and plan it in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that actually summarizes really, really nicely. Thank you so much, Catherine. And thank you for, lots of them been firing questions at you and covering them all. I mean, I think that's, that's been really, really interesting. And I think one of the points as well to say around the timeline is that, you had a very short timeline for an implementation of a CRM, and the only reason that was successful is exactly because of the way you approach the communication, the way you approached, managing the team and managing expectations. And it was very clear, this is the go live date, and and it's, bar, as you say, a few things around holidays, that was the plan and it was stuck to, and that only worked because of the approach that was taken, because otherwise, if there wasn't that buy-in from senior management and all the other things you did, it could have drifted. So I think
and I will say we had a tight timeline because of our we're calendar year on the finance system, so we wanted to get it in before we sent out our renewals. So it was really important we hit that deadline, because if we didn't, it meant we would have to wait until January to have done it, or maybe February, depending on so it was really important that we kind of hit that. So we worked really hard to get it as well, I think. So yeah.
And hopefully you say it was all worth it in the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, like with COVID stuff, it's just been amazing that we've had this system. And like we had to deal with the furlough system, like the furlough people, like initially, and we just adapted our maternity leave kind of widget, I guess you'd call it, on the CRM for furlough people, and it was really quick to do, and just within a week we got it all organized, sorted, and it was just like, I know for a fact we would never have got it that quickly or done anything like that with our old system. So it was, it's been a bit of a lifesaver, really. So
that's good. That's a really positive note to end on. So thank you so much, Catherine. That has been absolutely brilliant, and I do appreciate you giving up the time. So just to finish off, just to say thank you again, Catherine, for this morning, and everybody for joining us and for the great questions. It's great to have so many questions coming in. And then just to say, the rest of the events will be online for the ones coming up, and the recording will be available afterwards for any of you that want to go through it again. So thank you very much, Catherine, and hope to see you all again soon at some point.